Hunter Biden thought he had the situation under control with a joke, but President Trump took the microphone and left everyone speechless. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel was the place to be that night. Chandeliers glittered overhead, casting a golden glow over the elegant guests, who held glasses of champagne. The annual charity event was in full swing, bringing together the nation's elite, from politicians and business tycoons to celebrities and media icons. Animated conversation filled the room, mingling with the sounds of a live orchestra playing in the background. Among those in attendance was a figure who has recently come into the public eye, Hunter Biden. Dressed in a black tuxedo, Hunter already attracted attention, not for his clothes but for his animated conversation and his tendency to dominate the room with unexpected energy. Some smiled, others cast sidelong glances, but most were already accustomed to Hunter's mannerisms. This was not his first gala, and his reputation preceded him. On the other side of the room was Barron Trump, the youngest member of the Trump family. At just 18 years old, Barron already stood out for his height and composure. Dressed in an impeccable tuxedo, he exuded a surprising calm as he calmly surveyed the glittering crowd. Despite the occasional glance in his direction, he kept a low profile, chatting politely with those who approached. The event followed its usual course, with moments of silence, moving speeches, and musical performances that livened up the evening. But when the MC announced an impromptu segment where select guests could share jokes and anecdotes, a wave of excitement and anticipation ran through the audience. It was a tradition to break the ice and lighten the mood. But in a room full of larger-than-life personalities, there was always the risk of unexpected drama. Hunter Biden was the first to take the microphone. With his charisma and confidence, he took the stage, drawing everyone's attention. Suppressed laughter and hesitant applause echoed throughout the room. Hunter was known for his dry wit, and that night he seemed particularly excited to have a good time. But when the microphone was in his hand and he began to speak, there was a palpable anticipation in the air. People leaned in, curious and wary, wondering where he would direct his humor. And suddenly the night took an unexpected turn. Hunter began with some light jokes about the extravagances of high society and the event. The room laughed, with the kind of polite laughter you expect at a formal event. But soon, his tone changed, becoming more pointed. He stepped back from the microphone, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You know," he began, his eyes sweeping the audience. "It's not every day you get to share a space with such towering legacies." The audience shifted, unsure where this was going. Take young Barron Trump, for example. Heads turned, all eyes now fixed on Barron, who stood quietly near a table in the back of the room. Her expression didn't change, but the attention Hunter gave her was unexpected. "The kid has it all, doesn't he?" Hunter continued with a wry smile. "Tall, handsome, born into one of the most famous families in the world. But I always wondered." He paused, building suspense. "What's it like growing up with a name bigger than your personality?" An awkward silence fell over the room. The joke didn't have the desired effect. The audience shifted, unsure whether to laugh or recover. Some gave surprised looks. Others focused intently on Barron, waiting for his reaction. Barron, however, remained impassive, his face a mask of calm. But the tension in the room was electric, as if the air had grown thick. Hunter, sensing the discomfort, tried to laugh it off. "Come on, guys, it's just a joke," he said, raising his glass in a forced toast. But the audience didn't laugh. On the contrary, the room seemed to grow even colder. And then, Barron moved. Slowly and deliberately, he moved forward, making his way through the guests with surprising confidence. The audience instinctively parted, creating a path to the stage. It was as if the entire gala was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Barron's steps were measured, his posture impeccable, his expression unreadable. The room seemed frozen in time, every gaze fixed on him. For a teenager, his presence was commanding, almost magnetic. The guests murmured, their voices thick with curiosity and anticipation. Hunter, still holding the microphone, watched Barron's approach with an amused smile, clearly hoping to maintain control of the situation. "Well, this is unexpected," Hunter said, his voice tight with charm. "Young Trump has blessed us with an answer." When Barron reached the front of the room, he didn't immediately grab the microphone. Instead, he took a moment to stand there, his figure imposing against the stage lights. The silence was almost deafening. Finally, Barron extended his hand, and Hunter, perhaps more frustrated than he let on, handed him the microphone. The room collectively held its breath as Barron took the stage. His gaze swept across the audience. No rush, No hesitation, just calm and deliberate. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm, smooth, and, surprisingly, deep for his age. First of all, he began, "Thank you, Mr. Biden, for your generous words." The audience smiled, appreciating the subtle sarcasm in his tone. He continued, "It's funny that you mention legacies and personalities, because I've always believed that a legacy is what you leave behind when people forget your name. It's about how you treat others, how you carry yourself, and whether you can look in the mirror at the end of the day and say, 'I did something good.'" The words echoed in the air, deep and precise. Hunter's smile faltered, his boldness visibly shaken. Barron turned to him, his expression calm but firm. "And if there's one thing my parents taught me, it's that your actions speak louder than anything. So maybe instead of trying to make people laugh at someone else's expense, we should focus on uplifting others." A burst of applause began, tentative at first but quickly gaining momentum. The room was alive now. The tension was replaced by something more: admiration, respect, even pride. Barron had a magnetic presence, and the audience couldn't help but respond. Hunter shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Barron, however, wasn't finished yet. "This party," he said, his voice firm but polite, "is about raising funds for causes that matter. It's not about who can tell the best joke or attract the most attention. So let's focus on what really matters. No end?" The burst of applause sounded again, louder this time, and Barron handed the microphone back to Hunter with a slight wave. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked off the stage, his posture straight and his confidence unshakable. The change in the room was palpable. Barron had completely turned the tables. As he walked to his desk, the room vibrated with new energy, a stark contrast to the previous silence. The guests exchanged surprised glances, and the hushed murmurs quickly turned into animated conversations. The young man not only stood up for himself, but managed to articulate a lesson in grace and respect that resonated deeply with the audience. For many in the room, Barron Trump had been something of an enigma, seen but rarely heard. But that night, he broke expectations. The reserved teenager, who was always in the shadow of his family's reputation, emerged as a voice of reason and maturity. In the back of the room, a group of journalists wrote furiously, taking notes and taking photos of Barron. Cameras that had previously been focused on the stage now turned to his desk, capturing his composure as he sat back down, calmly sipping from his glass of sparkling water. Hunter, still on stage, tried to recover. "Well, guys," he said with a forced smile, "I guess I've been put in my place." The joke landed awkwardly, met with a few polite chuckles but mostly silence. It was clear that the audience's mood had changed. Sitting near the front, an older woman in an emerald gown leaned toward her date. "He didn't just talk back," she said, her voice thick with admiration. "He taught us all a lesson." The party continued, but it was impossible to ignore the change in the atmosphere. The guests were no longer focused on the glitz and glamour. Conversations turned to Barron, dissecting his passionate response and the wisdom he demonstrated. Meanwhile, Hunter left the stage, heading to the bar. His previous confidence was visibly shaken. Barron, on the other hand, remained composed. He listened attentively to the speeches that continued, occasionally nodding politely to those who approached his table to greet him. One of the evening's organizers, a famous philanthropist, approached Barron with a smile. "Young man," I told him calmly, "you have a gift for turning a moment into something meaningful. Thank you for reminding us why we are here tonight." Barron smiled, his response simple and humble. "I just said what I felt was right." But the guests knew it was more than that. He had changed the tone of the entire evening. By the time dinner was served, word of what had just happened was already spreading beyond the walls of the ballroom. Guests were texting friends, sharing Barron's words and discussing how someone so young could deliver such a thoughtful and composed response. Social media posts began to appear, with hashtags like #BarronTrump trending within hours. In a corner of the room, a prominent columnist for a major news network was furiously typing on his phone. "This isn't just a Gala story," he told a colleague sitting next to him. "This is a generational moment. The youngest Trump has just put us all on the spot." The evening's host returned to the stage, trying to bring the focus back to the evening's charitable cause. But it was clear that the energy in the room had shifted. Barron's answer had become the highlight, overshadowing even the high-profile auction items and big announcements of million-dollar donations. At a distant table, Hunter Biden sat silently. His earlier celebration had been subdued. He seemed more reflective now, swirling the remains of his drink and avoiding the gazes of anyone who might be watching his reaction. Whether he felt regret or just surprise was hard to tell. As the evening wore on, Barron remained at his table, engaging in calm, measured conversation with those who approached. Some complimented him on his eloquence, while others simply wanted to shake his hand, impressed by the strength of his character. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, a well-dressed couple waved excitedly. "He's right," one of them said, gesturing subtly to Barron. "What are we doing with our platforms if we're not lifting others up? That kid just taught us all a lesson." As the last of the guests began to pack up, Barron's moment had become the defining memory of the evening. It wasn't the glittering chandeliers, the celebrity gossip, or even the astronomical sums raised for charity. It was the teenager who had turned a potentially humiliating moment into a profound message about dignity and respect. As Barron and his security team headed for the exit, a young man approached him, visibly nervous. "I just wanted to say," he began, stumbling over his words. "You really inspired me tonight." "Thank you," Barron said, pausing for a moment before extending his hand for a firm shake. "I'm glad," he said simply. "We are all capable of making an impact. Just start small and keep moving forward." With those words, Barron left the gala, leaving behind not just a memory, but a challenge for all to reflect on. By the next morning, the gala's events had become a national talking point. Media outlets replayed clips of Barron's impassioned response, and social media platforms applauded his maturity and grace under pressure. Commentators debated what this moment meant, not just for the Trump family, but for the younger generation in general. Social media was flooded with reactions. Some users praised Barron's ability to remain composed in the face of public scrutiny, calling him a role model for the youth. Others highlighted the broader lesson in his words, emphasizing how respect and friendship should never be compromised, even in the spotlight. One viral tweet read, "Last night, an 18-year-old showed us what leadership is. It's not about power or privilege, it's about character. Congratulations, Barron Trump." Even those who were once critical of the Trump family couldn't help but recognize the grace with which Barron handled the situation. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden has remained silent on the matter, with his team not issuing comments to the press. The repercussions of the night spread beyond the news cycle. At the foundation organizing the gala, donations unexpectedly increased the next day, many accompanied by messages citing Barron's words as inspiration. Organizers quickly realized that his speech not only saved the night, but elevated its purpose, reminding everyone of the true meaning behind their efforts. In the weeks that followed, Barron's actions became a flashpoint in debates about the importance of character and leadership. Schools and youth organizations even began using clips of his response to teach lessons about respect, composure, and using your voice for good. But for Barron, life went on as usual. When asked about the moment by a reporter, he simply deflected. "I didn't say anything special," he humbly replied. "I just said what I believed." And therein lies the real lesson. It wasn't about making headlines or creating a viral moment. It was about standing firm in your values, no matter who was watching. Barron's words remind us all that character isn't built in big moments. It's revealed in them. If you took anything meaningful away from this story, take a moment to reflect on your own actions. How can you lift someone up today? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories that challenge us to think, grow, and live better.